Hello, I'm Jeremy Schuback, and welcome to the Photoshop Expert Series. What we're dealing with right now is how to remove anything from an image. Part 4, I want to say. In this session, we're going to be talking about the stamp tool to go from, all right, so we started with this image right here. In the last session, we took it to a place where it looked like this. And now we're going to be getting rid of these final last changes using the stamp tool and other techniques. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to actually see if I can use the content aware fill on this section right here just to finish it off because I think it might do a good job. So selecting it, delete, okay. It did a decent job, not great, but I'm happy with that. All right, my next step is I'm gonna, duplicate this layer out, and not duplicate the layer out, create a new empty layer, go to the stamp tool, and start going into the different areas in order to really fix them. So we have, a lot of really lousy edges. So you can look at this edge here. It's really lousy. So I'm just going to use the stamp tool. And remember the settings that we put on it in the former video. And I am just, basically the center point. And I am just going to make sure that we're able to maintain the edge. So I just did that right there. And because we did it on a separate layer, I can use the nudge tool to nudge it back and forth. I noticed that right here, it's pretty obvious we have this duplication happening over on the left. So I'm just using the stamp tool and, there we go. Now it's significantly less obvious. And, I could go in here and I could just get this edge exactly where I want. It depends how picky you are. I happen to be incredibly picky. For this area right here, I don't know if it will read or not. I'm going to zoom out, and I don't think I would ever, unless I was like really big into horse anatomy, have a problem with this right there. I would not know that that was false. Let's go down here. Let's fix this area. Again, I'm going to try doing it with the content aware fill because for something like wires, it is absolutely perfect. For when you have a large object that's blocking a large area and you basically need to understand exactly where the edges are, it's less perfect. But for wires, oh, it does such a good job. All right, so I'm just going to kind of blur this in a little bit. I'll blend it in, I should have said, just a little bit more. And, I can kind of still see a line that's happening right there that I'm not particularly happy with. But again, if I zoom out, no, that is pretty obvious. So I'm going to go into the original layer, and I'm going to select out this portion that I want right here. Just using the lasso tool, I'm going to select it out right here. This portion, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it in, so we have that pasted in right there, and I'm going to hit my eraser and just kind of set it down to 50% opacity by hitting 5, so my eraser brush is now at 50% opacity, and that looks just, all right, it looks no different. Maybe it looks a little bit better. I'm going to press Control E to merge it with the layer below it, and we still do have the problem of the shadow happening right here, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of okay with that, so I'm not going to deal with that. All right, for this leg over here, I'm going to go into this background layer. I'm going to go to my lasso tool. Excuse me, not this leg over here. This leg over here. I'm going to go into my stamp tool layer, so just stampers, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to go to my stamp tool, S for stamp tool, and I'm just going to, make sure that I maintain the edge and bring this down a bunch. Now, obviously, the leg part isn't what's a problem here. It's the foot part that I really need to figure out. So again, I'm going to grab this edge, just constantly resampling all of that, just so I can get rid of the fence post as much as possible. So the problem is the foot once we get down to the bottom, because I want this. And hey, if I want that, the best way to do it is to just take that. So I'm going to use my lasso tool, select around it, copy it, paste it, move it over to the right, bring it up in the stacking order. There we go. I'm going to put it over here to get it so one of the edges kind of matches. I'm going to hit Control T for transform, and normally with Control T we have our center point right in the center of it. And if I go around, I can rotate it like that. What I want is I want to move the center point. Notice how the cursor changes. There we go. I want to move the center point with that changed cursor to up in this area. If you find it snapping to something like that, you can zoom in and then you have a finer level of control. If you're still not able to get it, go into View, Snap, Snap to. It looks like those are actually turned off, so it's just going to by default do it. So I'm going to zoom in a bunch. There we go. I'm just going to zoom in a bunch, and here we go. That looks pretty good. The problem was I had zoomed in on the screen earlier, not zoomed in with Photoshop, so that was just A mistake by me. All right, and then you'll notice it rotates around the center point. Even cooler than that, I don't know if cool is really the word to use whenever dealing with Photoshop. Even nerdier than that is, all right, so if you hold down Shift, you can constrain the proportions and it'll go from the opposite corner from what you're dragging it from. If you hold down Shift and also hold down Alt at the same time, it will increase in size from the center point. So notice how the center point now stays in the same place, but everything else increases in size around it. So again, that was holding down Shift and Alt, and that will make it increase in size with the anchor point not changing and everything changing around it. I'm going to press OK, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a mask to this layer, and I'm going to go into my brush tool, make sure that my brush tool is set to black, just because black gets rid of, white adds. And also make sure that my brush tool has a very soft edge, so right-clicking, soft edge, and I'm just going to rub across, and I'm going to press X to go the other way. Maybe I'll set my brush on 50% opacity, so 5 to get my brush on 50% opacity. Again, hitting X, and I'll just kind of fade that in right there. And you know what? We'll zoom out to see if this is working. The leg is a little bit long. I'm looking at this and this leg is way too long. So I'm going to go to my move tool and I'm going to move this all up ever so slightly. So just making sure, here let's zoom in, that it is in the right place. And that looks a little bit better. So it's again the difference between this and this. Hey, subtleties like that matter, especially if you're a horse fiend. I would go in and I would adjust this to exactly where it needs to go, but you get the idea of how I could move it around as needed. So we got rid of that area right there. Now we still have this area down here. Let's get rid of all of this. This is no secret. I'm going to create a new layer, so Control-Shift-N to create a new layer. I'm going to use the Stamp tool, and I'm just going to decrease the size of the brush to something that's incredibly small, and I'm just going to maintain the edge. So this isn't any different from what we were doing with the remote control. This isn't any different from what we were doing for the fixes on the edge, and actually we still need to go through and fix a couple of those edges. What I like to do is I like to go through, so you'll notice I'm just trying to maintain the edge, and also notice that I am resampling between every single click. Anyhow, what I was saying is what I like to do is I like to go through and just make sure that in a very zoomed in level, everything is working and there's nothing that's like that edge is slightly off. So you'll notice right here that I don't really have the nose completely. If I wanted to, I could look into Horse Anatomy Guidebook or just look at a photo where I see a complete horse's nose. If I zoom out, I think this is going to be fine. It's not. It kind of looks like someone sewed the nose shut, so I'm just going to kind of bring this down a little bit. And I'm going to decrease the size of this brush and just kind of, if I really wanted to go in further, I could start with my paint tools. But I prefer just to do it completely with my stamp tools when that's possible, because then you know you are getting exactly the right color. So I'm not exactly sure how that line is supposed to look. Perhaps like that. That looks like it's just disappearing. But perhaps not. I'm really not sure. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, all right, so you know, we're 8 minutes in. I'm going to finish this right here. And if you are interested how to take this a step further, because there's more to do certainly. If we look at this right here, things like this aren't great. You know, the edge isn't really perfect. If we look at this edge, I can kind of see that there's a flaw right there. And then this edge, here, I'll solve that in this video. I'm just going to go to the original. I am going to copy this, I'm going to paste it, I'm going to move it over here, I'm going to move this over to the top, and we're just going to use the same technique that we used below. So again, just going to rotate this in, there we go, and I'm not going to even use a mask this time, I'm just going to use an eraser with a very soft edge, because I figure that should get the job done. Alright, there we go. If that's not good enough for you because the curve isn't exactly right, you could always go in, hit Control-T for transform, go to warp, and just kind of, you know, modify the curve so it's slightly better right there. So that's just curve and warp. Then I'm going to create a new layer and use the stamp tool to, you know, go through and, you know, get rid of this. And, you know, I would go in and be a little bit more detailed with all of this. All right, so if this is good enough for you, I suggest that you skip the next video, because I'm just going to get even more specific. And like, let's be honest. Considering I did this in 20 minutes time while describing it to you, which slows me down quite a bit, that's pretty good. There's a couple of things like I'd want to erase around this area, but things like that I am going to cover in the next session. So, this has been Jeremy Schuback with the Photoshop Experts series. Thank you for joining me. Please click subscribe, please tell your friends, please add a comment.